Your Nintendo update, and there's a lot to go over here, as you can see from my tabs. But the most recent one that we're gonna cover right now immediately is Switch passing the Nintendo DS to become the best-selling console in Nintendo's history. Nintendo has released its latest financial report, which means we have updated numbers on the various consoles. The Nintendo Switch 2 has surpassed 17 million units, but the real story here is the older hardware, the original Nintendo Switch, which has reached a major milestone and set a Nintendo record at 155.37 million units sold. The Switch has officially outsold the Nintendo DS to become the best-selling Nintendo console ever. It's still 5 million units away from catching up to Sony's PlayStation 2, and nobody's sure if the old Switch is going to catch up. Back in the old days, game consoles would grow cheaper over time. By the end of their life cycles, systems like PS2, Wii, and DS were selling for around $100 each. Alas, that's not really the case anymore. The cheapest you'll find a new Nintendo Switch Lite is in the $200 range, and that is the stripped-down version that can only be played in handheld mode, not docked. That's because Nintendo refuses to follow regular standard trends and sell old things for a cheaper price. They constantly think that their hardware and games that are older deserve to continue to be sold at brand new prices, even though things like their games are well over 5 years old and they're still selling them for $60 a piece. Personally, I think Nintendo is greedy for that. That makes it a much tougher impulse buy for casual players who aren't really into gaming but might pick one up on a whim or try it out. Think of how long the PS2 and Wii lasted after their successors came out. I don't think we'll see a system with such a long tail again. Well, that's the reason why is because the Switch 2 and the Switch are almost basically exactly the same system. So there's not really any reason to buy the brand new one when the old one literally works just as well. Anyway, while the Nintendo Switch is winding down and ending its run on top, the Switch 2 is just getting started. Since launching in June of 2025, it's become the fastest-selling Nintendo system ever, and we'll have to see if it can catch up with this momentum and match the sales numbers of the original Switch. But that story will take years to unfold and will probably be dead by the time we learn the answer. So I was actually in Japan right around the time that the Switch 2 released, and there was not a whole lot of hype and rigmarole in any of the stores that I went into because they had they seemed to have an overabundance of consoles on the shelves, so they weren't as in high demand over there. And continuing on, this is everything that's going to be announced at the February Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase, which was actually 2 days ago, and I apologize for getting this out now. The new Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase aired, and we got a smattering of both new reveals and familiar games finding their way onto the Switch ecosystem. We're rolling into the second year of the Nintendo Switch 2, and it seems like the new console's pulling in quite a few third-party games and ports. Here's everything that they saw during the live show. The charmingly retro anime co-op puzzler Orbitals has a launch window for its Switch 2 exclusive debut. Shape Farm and publisher Kepler Interactive are targeting summer 2026 for the spacefaring adventure, and today's gameplay breakdown looked pretty darn good to those looking for a new co-op game and playthrough with a partner or pal should probably take note. Another one is Paranormasight, The Mermaid's Curse, and that's coming out in February 19. Square Enix niche but beloved adventure Paranormasight is getting a follow-up in The Mermaid's Curse. The new entry looks to have more of the same scares and flowchart hopping story one would hope for, and we won't be waiting long either. The investigation will get underway in 2 weeks. And then Captain Tsubasa 2 World Fighters 2026 for the Switch, obviously. Who doesn't love the theatricality of anime boys playing soccer? Captain Tsubasa looks to bring all that competitive fire to the Switch later this year with the latest entry in the hyped-up sports RPG. And on February 11th is Tokyo Scramble, and that's coming out on Switch 2. You're on a train, commuting, having a normal day until a cave-in suddenly sends you tumbling into an underworld filled with reptilian monsters that all want to hunt you down. That sounds like the New York sewer systems. Well, maybe you'll get some tips for survival from Tokyo Scramble, a new survival horror game that's coming on February 11th. Valheim 2026 at some point. this year. I'm sure at least a few of you have fond memories of building a hearth and home in Valheim. Actually, I hate builder games personally. The Viking survival game that has become the big new thing on PC. If you liked an excuse to return to the forests, seas, and strongholds, it's coming to Switch 2 later this year. Hollow Knight, Nintendo Switch 2 edition. So it looks like they're porting Hollow Knight over to the Switch 2. If you've been itching for a Hollow Knight replay after finishing Silksong, you now have a great excuse. A Switch 2 version of Hollow Knight with enhanced visuals and improved frame rate arrives on the Nintendo handheld today. So this happened a couple of days ago. If you already own the Switch version of the game, the Switch 2 upgrade is free. All you have to do is pay the exorbitant price for a Switch 2. eFootball Kickoff, coming this summer. If anime-styled soccer isn't your thing, then eFootball is here to give you real-life players and a world tour to compete in. The latest eFootball arrives on Switch 2 sometime this summer. I think you would want to write this for fans of soccer or football, because if it's not their thing, they're not gonna play this game. I think they messed up the wording. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales, coming out in June 18th. Square Enix time-traveling HD 2D adventure is locking in a release date. Today's Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase showed off some of the Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales era spanning mechanics, and a release date of June 18th. Super Bomberman Collection, coming out at the time that this article was written. Final Fantasy Remake recently arrived on Switch 2, and now you have a timer on your playthrough to wrap it up before its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, makes Switch 2 and a timer before Final Fantasy VII Remake recently arrives on Switch 2, and now you have a timer on your playthrough to wrap it up before its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, makes its Switch 2 debut. The massive second entry in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy comes to Switch 2 on June 3rd, 2026. So they didn't actually even give me anything for Bomberman. They just went straight from Bomberman to Final Fantasy. Pragmata, April 24th, 2026. Capcom's puzzle shooter Pragmata is indeed coming to Switch 2 on April 24th. Actually, this whole article is kind of janky, so I'm just going to cut this out completely and give you guys the individual game articles. So Konami is releasing a 13-game Goemon collection for Nintendo Switch, PS5, and PC. And I know I said this was going to be a Nintendo update, but since these cover multiple platforms, I figured this also fits here as well. Set to release on Thursday, July 2nd for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and Steam, Ganbare Goemon Daishugo will include classic entries from the series from the Famicom, Super Famicom, and Game Boy eras. Unfortunately, the game does not appear to be set for release outside of Japan, since it's debuted only in the Japanese version of Tuesday's partner Nintendo Direct. According to an announcement, the compilation will include new features such as rewind, quick save, turbo buttons, and rapid fire buttons. A music player will also be included, in addition to a gallery showing each game's instructional manual. And these are the games that are coming out on it: is Ganbare Goemon Kakari Kuri Journey, Ganbare Goemon 2, Famicom is when it originally came out, Ganbare Goemon Gaiden Kita Ogan Kisiru, and I apologize if I'm messing these up, The Legend of the Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, Ganbare Goemon Gaiden 2, Tinka no Zaiho, Ganbare Goemon 2, 3, Kira Kira Dochu, Go For It Ebisumaru, Trick Maze, Kurofuni to no Nazo, the Tengu Party's Counterattack, and Starry Sky Warrior Dynamite Appears. The collection will be available both digitally and physically, and Konami plans to offer a limited edition package in Japan featuring physical items. The Goemon games center on the titular character and are notable for their humorous tone and parodies of pop culture and other video games. I honestly have never played these games. I don't think I've ever actually even heard of these games. Alright, and now here's the Borderlands version for Switch 2. It's actually going to be delayed, is the short version of this. Borderlands 4 released on PlayStation and Xbox and PC back in September of last year. According to industry tracking group Circana, it was the fourth best-selling game of the year and continues to move copies. Hopes were high that the game would get something of a second life when it released on the Nintendo Switch 2, but that version, originally scheduled for release in October, has now been delayed again, and it doesn't look like it's going to get released anytime soon. Honestly, from what I saw, everything of Borderlands 4, it was mediocre at best. In fact, if you look it up on Steam, the ratings are mixed. However, unrelated to this story, currently Borderlands 4 is actually on sale on Steam, and it's only going to cost you about $40 right now. So if you were on the fence about getting it, if you haven't played it yet, like myself, because I refuse to spend $80 on a game, now might be a decent time. Take-Two's Alan Lewis spoke to Variety and revealed that development on Borderlands 4 for Switch 2 has been quote-unquote paused, which means Gearbox is not currently working on bringing the game to the finish line. The game is now delayed indefinitely with no release date in sight. Obviously, I haven't read ahead yet, but I wonder if this is related to the whole censoring thing that Nintendo likes to do for certain games. Now, paused isn't the same as canceled, but the writing is on the wall for the Switch 2 version of Borderlands 4. Previews of the game were lambasted for their poor performance compared to other console versions, and the game didn't launch in an optimal state on any platform. Didn't launch in any optimal state on any platform, and it was also overpriced and overhyped. And a lot of fans like myself didn't bother to play it, and I'm still holding out. Although, like I said earlier, it's on sale, so I might buy it because I love Borderlands games, and it's at a price that I find acceptable for a new game. Borderlands has a history of underwhelming handheld ports, which can forget the tremendously terrible PlayStation Vita version of Borderlands 2. I didn't realize it came out on Vita. I thought Vita was a defunct console at that time. I didn't realize that it was actually still a thing at the time. I'm a huge Vita fan and a huge Borderlands fan, but Borderlands 2 on Vita is an unplayable disaster, and a game I've never come close to finishing. Fortunately, Borderlands 2, and Borderlands the pre-sequel are all great on Nintendo Switch, running at a decent 30 FPS with visuals that don't feel peeled back from the PS3 versions at all. Compare the Vita version of BL2, which often boasts a single-digit frame rate and crashes frequently. Throw in painfully long load times, and you can understand why I've never completed the Vita version of Borderlands 2. Alas, the Switch version of Borderlands 3 isn't polished since it uses the upgraded Unreal Engine 4. The original games used Unreal 3. Well, and that's what you get for trying to play a computer game on a Game Boy, or a product that is essentially a Game Boy. So I think if you're going to play a huge game that's graphically heavy on a reduced functionality console, you should expect a reduced functionality in the game. I'd like to think that Borderlands 4 on Switch will see the light of day someday. There's too much money on the table to just abandon the project. Maybe it's just not the right time yet. Perhaps they'd be better off waiting a couple of years until Borderlands 4's season of DLC and expansions are over and done with before launching the game on Switch 2. Maybe Gearbox needs to hire more people who understand the intricacies of the Switch 2 hardware in order to fit Borderlands 4 onto the system. Or maybe they just don't release it on a handheld, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. Maybe they should go back to work on Borderlands 3. That game could really use a proper Switch 2 version. For that matter, what about Tiny Tina's Wonderland? That game would be lovely on Switch 2. No, Tiny Tina's Wonderland is absolute trash on any version, or any console, or any computer. I will keep saying that as long as it keeps being brought up. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a horrible game, and nobody should play it in the history of ever again. If I could have remembered to return it before time ran out for me to return it, I would return it right now. That game is so horrible, I will never play it again, and I would recommend that you never play it on anything at all. Sorry, that is my tantrum and my rant for this article. For now, Borderlands 4 is only available for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And those are the three that it should stay on. It is, however, Steam Deck verified for what that's worth to you. That is the only handheld that it should probably be on. All right, and here's more on the Borderlands 4. Borderlands 4 Premium DLC Bounty Pack 2, Legend of the Stone Demon, will drop on February 26th for those of you that are interested. Described by Gearbox as an all-new, bite-sized, yet flavorful narrative content. And I realize I'm tangenting here, but it needed to get out for this needs to get out for those of you that played Borderlands 4. And also, like I said, it's at a price that I'd be willing to actually pay to actually play this game. The new DLC includes mission and legendary loot to collect, as well as themed vault card featuring 24 cosmetics and 4 re-rollable pieces of gear unlocked through gameplay. While the team held back on the story details, promising that we'll find out more about the Legend of the Stone Demon closer to launch. We do get more info about the major update that will be released alongside Bounty Pack 2 Pearl-Scent gear, a new rarity tier with power levels superior to even legendary gear. This new rarity will be available to all players regardless of what edition of Borderlands 4 they own, although some pieces of Pearl-Scent gear will be exclusive to Bounty Pack 2. They're also treated to a little update on what's still to come as well. The first story pack for Borderlands 4, entitled Mad Ellie and the Vault of the Damned, will arrive next month and introduces multiple main and side missions set in a new zone of Kairos, as well as new gear and cosmetics. The story will center on the return of the indomitable fan favorite Ellie, and focus on a cosmic horror theme with a bloodier, darker tone. It'll also include the first new playable Vault Hunter, Cash, a former casino dealer bot. Borderlands 4 gives the series a massive kick in the pants it has needed, with a fantastic open world and greatly improved combat. Even if bugs and invisible walls can sometimes throw off that groove, which they said in a review, and they gave it an 8 out of 10. Earlier this week, they reported that Borderlands 4 publisher Take-Two announces the Switch 2 version was paused, bordering on permanently. And moving on to the Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition. So it looks like Fallout 4 is getting a port to Switch 2 as well. When the Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition launched last November for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, Bethesda also promised a Switch 2 version would arrive in 2026. Today's Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase revealed that the game's Nintendo debut is just a couple of weeks away. When Fallout 4 arrived on PS4, Xbox, and PC in 2015, it earned a 9 out of 10 from Game Informer, contributing to an 87 out of 100 on reviews aggregate site Metacritic. This definitive edition of the 2015 open world RPG includes every post-launch expansion and over 150 pieces of Creation Club content. Although Nintendo did not promote this, the other perk of playing on Switch 2 is the viability to strap the console to your arm like VATS, they mean like a Pip-Boy, to play the game like the coolest person around, even if that isn't an official feature and will probably result in you damaging your Switch 2, so don't try it. The ability to play Fallout 4 on the go through your Nintendo Switch 2 is an exciting proposition, and will be able to do just that when Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition arrives on February 24th. So my fellow Fallout fans, you can check this out on Switch 2 on the 24th later this month. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to Nintendo Switch 2 and Xbox this year. So it's no longer going to be stuck to just the Nintendo or not Nintendo, it's the PlayStation or computer. During today's Nintendo Switch 2 Direct presentation, Square Enix made an exciting appearance to show off Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which will be joining the predecessor's remake and catching Switch players up on the story that at last on June 3rd of 2026. So that's June 3rd, 2026 is the new version of the Final Fantasy game coming out on Switch 2. They also learned via Xbox Store that the game will hit Xbox consoles at the same time. We have known the entire FF7R saga would be on Nintendo platforms at some point. It was just a matter of time. Rebirth's appearance will effectively catch players on Nintendo's platforms up with the story so far, just in time for what we hope will be the announcement and release of the third and final part of this saga. Pre-orders for Rebirth on the eShop began today, and there are various digital bonuses available for those who take advantage of the pre-orders. Final Fantasy VII Remake first launched in 2020, and yet delivered anyway on those high expectations. This article gave it an 8 out of 10, saying it breathes exciting new life into a classic while standing as a great RPG all its own. The game was originally a PS4 exclusive, but came to PS5 with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, and later to PC and Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo Switch 2 as well just recently. We similarly loved Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. They gave it a 9 out of 10, and saying it impressively builds off of what Remake set in motion, both as a best-in-class action RPG full of exciting challenges and awe-inspiring recreation of a world that has meant so much to so many for so long. And they'll keep posting on updates about the Nintendo Switch release later on. And as a funny note, I thought I would add in here and ruin everybody's childhood with this article. Pokemon character designer reveals that Ultra Beasts were inspired by rejected artwork for Pokemon. Pokemon character designer Yusuke Omura has revealed how he created the designs of the Ultra Beasts, showing that even rejected concepts can prove inspirational to artists later on. Ultra Beasts first appeared in the 3DS games Pokémon Sun and Moon, known as Generation 7 of the Pokémon games back in 2016. They are extra-dimensional Pokémon that come from Ultra Space and occasionally stumble into the Pokémon world through wormholes. Pokémon series character designer Yusuke Omura tweeted on February 4th about how he designed the Ultra Beasts for Sun and Moon, and Omura was the lead Pokémon designer, continuing to work alongside original Pokémon designer Ken Sugimori. Omura explained that he came up with the Ultra Beasts looks by thinking back on his Pokémon designs that Sugimori had rejected. Omura then explained, I then deliberately based the artistic direction of the Ultra Beasts designs on the reasons that these Pokémon were rejected. In a way, they are like a collective manifestation of my own resentment, which is kind of scary, Omura noted, before clarifying, this doesn't mean that I hate Sugimori or anything like that. The Ultra Beasts are more sci-fi or insect-inspired than the cuter, often animal or plant-influenced designs of Ken Sugimori's original Pokémon, such as Squirtle or Bulbasaur. They also often have exaggerated features like the mosquito-like Buzzwole's chunky muscles or the elegant Pheromosa's long antenna. In response to Omura's tweet, users chimed in with praise for the Ultra Beast designs. Thank you for bringing Ultra Beasts into the world, one user replied. I think their otherworldly appearance also opened up new avenues for Pokémon. Omura replied, I designed them hoping that would be the case. It really feels like the Pokémon world expanded thanks to the Ultra Beasts, another commenter added. The designer's hard work really paid off. Many others hope the Ultra Beasts will appear in another mainline Pokémon game in the future. With Pokémon marking its 30th anniversary this year, fans can look forward to at least one new game coming out, Pokémon Pokotopia, but it's likely that there are more announcements in the pipeline. For starters, Jigglypuff will be appearing in the Super Bowl, of all places, in a special anniversary video this weekend. So if you want to check out the new Pokémon commercial, it's going to be in the Super Bowl this year. And with that, I will say goodnight, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and you can either catch me on Kick or here on the YouTube. Catch you later, everybody.